I used to think money could buy time. I've said that line 100 times in boardrooms, casually, as a way to justify my obsession with success. It was my truth, the idea that if I just worked hard enough, accumulated enough wealth, I could make up for everything I'd lost. But today, as I walked into family courtroom 6, I understood the lie I'd been telling myself. Money can buy almost anything, but it can't buy back time. And it certainly can't buy back the trust I'd lost, or the family I had abandoned. The air smelled of lemon-scented cleaner and stale paper. The sound of my shoes clicking on the cold floor was the only noise in the quiet room. There was nothing comforting here, no familiar luxury, no business deals to close. This was a place where lives were decided, where my future and my daughter's future would be shaped by a judge who would likely see me as a man who had failed both his daughter and the woman he had once loved. I had walked away from Maya and Lila 7 years ago, thinking I could outrun the guilt. I thought that focusing on my business, building my empire, would somehow make me feel fulfilled, would somehow make the pain of abandoning them fade away. But now, here I was, facing the consequences of my choices. I looked up at the bench where Maya sat. She was in full judge mode, composed, calm, the way I remembered her when we were both younger, when she believed in me, when she believed in us. That woman was gone, replaced by someone more guarded, someone who had lived without me for too long. And that was my fault. Maya didn't even glance in my direction. She was scanning the documents, her eyes flicking over the papers, no emotion betraying her face. She had every right to be angry, to shut me out. I deserved nothing from her. But today, I was asking for everything. The courtroom was silent as Maya's lawyer, Patel, began her pitch. Your Honor, my client, Mr. Cole Harrington, petitions for temporary visitation and joint decision-making regarding his daughter, Lila Whitaker, who is 6 years old. We have submitted evidence of his stable financial position, established living situation, and a trust fund for Lila's education and well-being. The words sounded hollow as they left Patel's mouth. I wasn't here for financial security or material gifts. I was here because I wanted to be a father. I wanted to prove that I could be someone Lila could count on, not just another person in a suit handing out checks. But none of it mattered if Maya didn't believe I could do it. None of it mattered if she didn't trust me. Maya's eyes briefly met mine, but I didn't see anything familiar in them. I saw a woman who had been hurt, who had spent years raising Lila alone. She wasn't the woman I had left behind. She was stronger now, harder, and I knew that I was going to have to work much harder than I'd ever imagined to break through the walls I had helped build between us. Mr. Harrington, Judge Hayes finally spoke, his voice cutting through the silence. I see a lot of numbers here, but children don't live on balance sheets. They live on trust, love, and consistency. His words hit me like a punch. He wasn't wrong. What was I offering Lila? A trust fund, a house. None of it mattered if I didn't prove I could give her something far more important. Myself. I cleared my throat, trying to gather my thoughts. Your Honor, I'm not here to fix this with money, I said, my voice steady, but the words felt heavy. I'm here to prove that I can be there for Lila. If that means 15 minutes of story time, every night in a supervised center, then that's what I'll do. But I want one thing to be clear. I want Lila's emotional stability to be the priority. That comes before any reputation, before anything else. Maya didn't respond, but I could see the smallest shift in her expression. It wasn't much, but it was their flicker of something. Maybe it was doubt. Maybe it was hope. Either way, I knew it wasn't enough. Not yet. Judge Hayes looked over the documents again, then turned to me. The court will issue a temporary order for supervised visits and communication through the parenting app, he said, his tone final. Both parties will follow these guidelines, and the court will review the progress in 30 days. Further decisions will be based on Lila's emotional well-being, not financial status or promises. The gavel fell. It was over for now. I wasn't happy with the outcome, but I wasn't surprised. I had expected this. I had expected to be told I couldn't have everything I wanted. But I wasn't giving up. I couldn't. I wasn't about to walk away again. The tension didn't leave me when the session ended. As I stood up, I glanced over at Maya. Her face was unreadable. She didn't look at me as I passed. I wasn't sure what I expected from her. Maybe some acknowledgement that I was trying, maybe even a hint of forgiveness. But I wasn't entitled to that. I had to earn it. I walked out of the courtroom, my mind racing. What now? How do you rebuild something you've broken so completely? I didn't hear from Maya the next day. And the day after that, she didn't return any of my messages. I didn't blame her. I didn't expect anything. But I couldn't sit still. I couldn't go back to my office, to my meetings, pretending like I had everything under control. I couldn't just go on with my life as if this didn't matter. That night, I made a decision. I called the supervisor at the visitation center and scheduled our first meeting. I would show up on time, every time. I would be there, not for Maya, not for me, but for Lila. And maybe, just maybe, I could prove that I was worth the chance to be her father. The first visit was hard. Lila was distant, unsure of me. She barely spoke, and when she did, it was only to ask about Maya or about things I didn't have answers to. But I didn't force it. I just showed up. I listened. I read her stories, just like I promised. At the end of the visit, she didn't ask to see me again. She didn't hug me. She just nodded, like she had done her part. But I knew that wasn't the end. It couldn't be. The days that followed were full of quiet moments. Each visit brought new challenges, new ways I had to prove myself. I stayed patient. I stayed present. I didn't rush it. I didn't have the answers. But for the first time in a long time, I knew I was doing the right thing. The weeks after the court hearing were a blur. Every day felt like a test, a delicate balancing act where one misstep could undo all the progress I was trying to make. Maya and I had agreed on the terms for co-parenting, but there was a difference between agreeing to something on paper and actually following through in real life. And when it came to Lila, the stakes felt impossibly high. I had to remind myself every day that showing up wasn't enough. Consistency in words, in actions, was the key. I had spent years running from responsibility, hiding behind the work, behind the excuses. But there was no hiding now. If I wanted to be part of Lila's life, I had to prove it. The first few visits were awkward. Lila was cautious, understandably so. She didn't know me. I was a stranger to her. I had to remind myself that I wasn't entitled to anything. I had to start from zero. I had to be patient. There was no quick fix. There was no shortcut to rebuilding trust. The first time I sat with Lila at the supervised center, I tried not to overwhelm her. I asked simple questions about her day at school, about what she liked to do for fun, but she didn't respond much. Her eyes were wary, almost as if she was waiting for me to disappoint her. And I couldn't blame her. I had been absent for so long that she had every right to doubt me. After the first visit, I wasn't sure if Lila even remembered my presence. She was quiet, distant, lost in her own world, and I was left feeling like an outsider in my own daughter's life. But I couldn't give up. I had to show her, day after day, that I was there to stay. Maya and I spoke only about the logistics of Lila's life. There were no emotional conversations, no attempts to rebuild the past. We stuck to what we had agreed on: the schedule for visitation, school updates, and doctor's appointments. Maya kept her distance, but it wasn't the coldness I had feared. It was more like neutrality. She was no longer angry with me, but she wasn't ready to let me back in either. The distance between us wasn't just physical. It was emotional. And that was fine, I told myself. She had every right to be cautious. I had to prove that I could be trusted, that I was serious about this, that I was serious about being a father. One afternoon, Maya texted me about Lila being sick. My heart skipped a beat. I couldn't help but think about the times in the past when I would have been too busy to show up for something like this. But now, things were different. I couldn't afford to make excuses anymore. I had to be there. I cancelled my meeting and drove straight to the clinic. When I arrived, I found Maya sitting in the waiting area, her arms crossed and her face a mask of concern. She looked up when I entered, and for a moment, our eyes met. There was no anger there. There was no judgment. Just two parents, trying to figure out how to navigate this strange, new version of our relationship. "Hi," I said quietly, sitting next to her. "How's she doing?" Maya gave a small shrug. "She's fine, just a cold. But you know how it is with kids, when they're sick, it's always worse than it seems." I nodded, feeling a pang in my chest. I should have been here all along. We didn't talk much during the appointment. Maya handled everything with quiet efficiency, and I followed her lead, trying not to make myself a distraction. But when the doctor gave us the green light to go home, I offered to take Lila for a walk in the park. Maya hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Okay," she said, her voice soft. "Just make sure she gets some rest after." We stepped out into the cool air, and Lila clung to my side as we walked to the park. It was quiet, just the sound of the wind rustling through the trees, the occasional car driving by. Lila seemed to relax in my presence, a small smile tugging at her lips as she pointed out different things to meet the birds. The leaves, the flowers, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this could work. Maybe I could be a father to her. The following weeks were a delicate dance. Lila and I had our routine now, story time, simple questions, short walks, but it was slow. Too slow, sometimes. I had to remind myself that Lila was testing me, and I had to give her space to do that. She had every right to take her time. She had to decide for herself if she could trust me, and I wasn't about to rush her. There were still moments of tension, like the time I showed up late for a visit because of a work call. Maya didn't say anything, but the disappointment was there. I saw it in the way she looked at me. I knew I couldn't afford another slip. Lila was counting on me now, and I couldn't let her down again. But that was the thing. I couldn't be perfect. I had to stop expecting myself to be. Maya wasn't expecting me to be perfect. She was expecting me to be real. And if I could prove that I was real, if I could prove that I could show up when it mattered most, then maybe, just maybe, I could start to rebuild what I had lost. I didn't want to be just another man who made promises he couldn't keep. I wanted to be a father who was there, a father who didn't disappear when things got hard. The day Lila asked me to take her to the science fair was a breakthrough. I hadn't been expecting it, but when she said it, I couldn't help but feel like I had made some small progress. "Do you think I did good?" she asked after the event, looking up at me with those wide eyes that had started to trust me. "Just a little. You did great," I said, crouching down to her level. "I'm really proud of you." And in that moment, I realized how much I had missed. I had missed watching her grow, watching her learn, watching her become her own person. But it wasn't too late. It wasn't too late for me to be the father she deserved. As the weeks passed, I began to find more comfort in the new routine. Maya and I still spoke only about Lila, but there was less tension between us. We were both doing our part for her. The fact that we could talk about Lila without the weight of our past hanging over us was a small victory. I knew we weren't ready to be a family again, not yet, but we were building something, slowly, carefully. One evening, Maya and I stood by the door after one of the visits, watching Lila run up the stairs. She paused, glancing back at us. "Dad," she asked. I froze, not sure I had heard it correctly. Maya looked at me, her face unreadable. She didn't say anything, but I saw something shift in her expression, something that looked like hope, or maybe just acceptance. But for the first time, I didn't need her to say anything. I was starting to believe that this was real, that, despite everything, I had a chance to be the father I had never been. And maybe, just maybe, Maya was starting to believe in that possibility too. The first real breakthrough came when Maya said, "You're doing well." It wasn't much, just a quiet observation, but to me, it felt like a mountain had been moved. The words weren't a declaration of forgiveness, not yet, but they were something I hadn't expected to hear. There had been no promises between us, no commitments of any kind. Yet, somehow, I was proving that I could show up. Not perfectly, not without mistakes, but consistently. And that had to count for something. Still, it wasn't easy. Every step forward felt like it was paired with a step backward. There were days when Lila would smile at me, lean into my shoulder as we read together, and I would think, this is it. This is how it's supposed to be. But then, the next day, she would pull away, hesitant, as though reminding me that there was a wall between us that I hadn't yet torn down. And I couldn't blame her. I had been gone for far too long. I had told myself that this would take time. But what did that really mean? Time for what? To be forgiven? To be accepted? I wasn't sure. But I had committed myself to this path, to being here for Lila, and by extension, for Maya. Whether she realized it or not, she was starting to allow me back into her life, little by little. And I couldn't waste the opportunity. The visits continued, each one a test, each one a reminder that showing up was only half the battle. I had to earn this, prove that I wasn't just another part of her past. The first few visits were quiet, awkward silences, filled with small talk about school, about what Lila had been doing at the playground, about the weather. But as time went on, Lila started to open up a little. She started asking me more questions, questions about my life, about the things I did when I wasn't with her. There was a curiosity there that hadn't been present before, and that gave me hope. One Saturday, I took Lila to the park. It was part of our routine now, something we both looked forward to. I'd learned the hard way not to push her, not to rush things. So, When she asked me to push her on the swings, I didn't hesitate. We spent the afternoon together, running around, laughing, and just being two people who were learning how to exist together. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was doing something right that evening. Maya sent me a text asking if I could take Lila to her science fair the following week. I was floored. Lila wanted me to be there. It wasn't that I doubted she wanted me there. I had learned by now that her need for me was real, but the fact that Maya was asking me to participate in something so important to Lila made it feel different. It was a step forward, and it was one I hadn't expected. The science fair came quickly. I arrived early to get a good seat and had no idea what to expect. I knew it would be a simple event. Lila's class had set up a few tables with science projects, and they were going to explain them to the parents. But when I walked in, I was struck by how much effort had gone into it. The room was decorated with posters and diagrams, and the air was thick with the excitement of kids showing off their hard work. I found Lila's table and immediately spotted her. She was standing there, proudly showing off her project, a detailed display on how weather patterns work. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers, and that's what made it so important. I stood off to the side for a while, watching her explain her project to a teacher, her face lit up with pride. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was intruding. I felt like I was part of her life. I didn't need to be the center of attention. I didn't need to be the one making the speeches. I just needed to be there. When Lila saw me standing by, she lit up. "Dad," she said, running over to me. The word hit me like a punch to the gut. I wasn't used to hearing it, not from her. It felt like a privilege, a rare moment I had to hold on to. She grabbed my hand and dragged me to her table. "Look, I made this," she exclaimed, pointing to the diagram of clouds and rainfall. "It's amazing," I said, kneeling down to her level. "You did such a great job, Lila." She smiled, and for the first time, I felt like I had truly earned her trust. It wasn't a big moment, not a grand gesture. It was just her joy at sharing her work with me. But it was everything. It was enough. Later, when we walked out of the building together, Maya was waiting for us. She looked at me with a small smile, her arms crossed over her chest, as though she was still figuring out what to make of this new version of me. But there was no coldness in her eyes, no judgment. She was just watching. "You did good," she said quietly, her gaze flicking over to Lila, who was skipping ahead, lost in her own world. "Thanks," I said. "It meant a lot to me to be here." She nodded, her arms still crossed. "She's been asking about you more, Cole. She wants to know about your life, about the things you do when you're not around." The words hit me like a wave, but I didn't back away. This was my chance to prove that I could be the father she needed me to be. "I'm here now," I said, my voice steady. "I'll be here for whatever she needs." For both of you. Maya didn't say anything for a long time. We stood there in silence, watching Lila as she twirled around in the parking lot. The air was cool, the evening just starting to settle in. Then, finally, Maya spoke again. "You're doing okay, Cole," she said, her voice quieter this time. "I'm not sure what this will look like in the end, but for now, you're doing okay." It wasn't much. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't everything I wanted, but it was something. It was the first time Maya had said something positive about what I was doing as a father, and in that moment, it felt like a victory. The weeks after the science fair felt like another small chapter in the story I was trying to write with Lila and Maya. It wasn't always clear whether I was making any real progress, but I was showing up, and, for the first time, I didn't feel the need to explain myself every time I did. It was a new kind of feeling, a kind of quiet acceptance that didn't need words to validate it. But even as I settled into this new rhythm, things were still far from easy. Lila's smiles were rare, but they were there. Maya's cautious distance remained, though she seemed less guarded in the quiet moments. We were slowly learning how to be together without the weight of the past suffocating us. But I could still feel the tension between Maya and me, and between Maya and Lila, as we were all trying to figure out how to live together without the shadows of our past decisions clouding everything. I tried to focus on the positives. Lila had started asking questions about me again. Small ones, harmless ones. What do you do at work, Dad? Or do you like dinosaurs? They weren't about anything that really mattered, but they were an opening. And when she asked about things like my childhood, I knew I had a chance to shape the narrative. I didn't have to hide from the past. I could be honest, and maybe, over time, Lila would come to understand that honesty was the one thing that had always been missing from our relationship. But there was still a giant elephant in the room, Maya. I knew she was still weighing my every action. I didn't blame her. I had done far worse than just disappear for years. I had ruined things. The trust we were both trying to rebuild wasn't something that could be repaired overnight. And yet, every day, we were getting a little bit closer to something that felt like normal. Something that felt like a family again. Maya hadn't told me how she really felt about me in years. Sure, she had thanked me for showing up for Lila, but it was always in passing, always quickly. There were no deep conversations, no real acknowledgement that we were both trying to forge a new path. That was fine though. I knew better than to push. I had pushed too much in the past. All I could do was show up and prove that I could be the father she needed me to be. And maybe, just maybe, if I proved myself over time, we could rebuild something together. But I wasn't going to hold my breath. Maya was too independent, too strong, to ever rely on me again in the way she once had. That's why, when I saw Maya that morning, standing outside her apartment as I pulled up, I hesitated. There was a tension in the air between us, something unspoken, but felt just the same. Lila had spent the weekend with me, and Maya had texted that she would pick her up at noon. I was ready for the usual exchange. Small talk about school, doctor's appointments, work, but I had been noticing lately that Maya wasn't as quick to brush me off. She had started talking to me a little longer, looking me in the eye a little more. I parked my car and got out, ready to do what was expected. "Hey," I said, a little too cheerfully, trying to break the ice. "Hey," Maya replied, her voice as calm as ever, but I could hear the weight beneath it. "How's she doing?" "Good. She's really into space lately, wants to know all about the stars and planets. I've been reading some science books with her." Maya gave a small nod, glancing at the door where Lila was gathering her things. "That's great," she said softly. But then she hesitated. "Cole, can I talk to you for a minute?" The way she said it tentative, almost like she was bracing herself for something, made me pause. I felt a pang of fear, but I swallowed it down, trying not to let it show. "Sure," I said, my voice more serious now. We walked to the side of the building, out of earshot of Lila, who was still inside, getting her backpack ready. "Maya, If this is about the visits, about how things are going, I want to know if I'm doing something wrong, I said quickly. I want to be doing it right for her. For you. Maya shook her head, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. It's not that, she said, and there was a moment of silence between us, heavy but not entirely uncomfortable. I've been thinking about something. About us. About the past. You know, the things we never really talked about. I froze, not sure how to respond. My heart pounded a little faster in my chest. Maya, I'm not asking for an apology, she cut me off gently. I don't need you to fix everything. But I think we need to be honest with each other. Lila needs us to be. I nodded, swallowing hard. She was right. I'd spent too much time running from the hard conversations. Too much time pretending like the past was behind us when it was still very much here, lingering in every silent moment. I'm listening, I said, my voice steady, though the words felt like they were coming from a stranger. But that was the point, wasn't it? I had to listen. I had to understand. Maya looked up at me, her gaze meeting mine for the first time in a long time. I've been thinking about the way we are with Lila. We're getting there, but I don't want to push her. She's still figuring out who she can trust. And, Cole, she paused, almost as if she were collecting her thoughts. I don't know if I can forgive you for everything. Not yet, and maybe I never will. But for Lila's sake, we have to figure this out. We have to figure out how to be a family again. My breath caught in my throat. The weight of her words hit me like a truck, and for a second, I couldn't say anything. I had always feared this moment, the moment when Maya finally said the words. I had been dreading. Forgiveness wasn't guaranteed. I took a deep breath and said the first thing that came to my mind. I'm not asking you to forgive me right away. I know I don't deserve it. But I'll keep trying, Maya. I'll keep showing up for her, for both of you. You don't have to trust me yet, but I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere. Maya didn't respond immediately. She just stood there, looking at me for a long moment. And then, finally, she nodded slowly. Okay, she said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. Okay. We stood there for a moment, the silence between us not uncomfortable but meaningful. In that moment, I realized that, for the first time in a long time, we weren't two people avoiding the truth. We were finally speaking it, facing it head on, with no more running. The weeks after that conversation with Maya were a blur of moments, each one filled with small breakthroughs and setbacks. The routine we had set for Lila visits, school activities, weekends together became the scaffolding on which we tried to build something new, something real. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. For the first time in a long time, I could see the possibility of healing, not just for Lila, but for Maya and me as well. But the past was never too far behind us. Every time Maya and I spoke, I felt the weight of the years we had spent apart. Every word we exchanged was measured, every action carefully considered. It was as though we were both still standing on the edge of something, waiting for the other to make a move. Maya's walls were still up, and I couldn't blame her. She had lived without me for so long, without any guarantee that I would ever come back. The fact that she was willing to even consider co-parenting, to give me the chance to be a father to Lila, was something I didn't take for granted. I wasn't asking for her forgiveness. I wasn't asking for anything more than the chance to prove myself, to show her that I could be the man she once believed in and the father Lila needed me to be. It wasn't easy. The first few months were filled with small victories. Moments where I could see the flicker of trust in Maya's eyes. The way Lila would come to me for help with her homework, or reach out for a hug without hesitation. But there were still times when Lila would pull away, still moments when Maya would look at me with a caution I couldn't blame her for. I knew that my actions were what would speak the loudest. I had to keep showing up. I had to be steady, even when everything else felt like it was falling apart. It was a Wednesday afternoon when I got the call from Maya Cole. "We need to talk," she said, her voice steady but serious. I immediately felt a pang of anxiety in my chest. What now? What had I done wrong this time? I had spent the last few weeks trying to be careful, trying to be patient. I thought I was doing everything right, but I knew Maya had her own way of seeing things. She was the one who had been carrying the weight of everything for so long, and no matter how hard I tried, I knew I couldn't fix everything in a few months. "Is everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. "It's about Lila," she replied. "She's been asking more questions, and there's something. I think it's time we talk about it." I felt the air in my lungs freeze. "What kind of questions?" "She wants to know why you weren't there, why you weren't around when she was born. She wants to know why she didn't have a dad like the other kids." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My mind flashed back to that day in the hospital, the day Maya was in pain and I was making deals. The day I chose work over her. The day I left her alone to raise our daughter. I had failed. I couldn't deny it anymore. "I'll be there," I said, my voice low. "I'll talk to her." "You're not going to get an easy answer, Cole," Maya warned, her voice tinged with caution. "She's hurt. She's confused. And she's been asking me all these questions, expecting me to have the answers. But I don't have them. And I don't think you do either. But you need to be honest with her. You owe her that." I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions swirling in my chest. I know, I owe her that. I'll be honest with her. But I can't fix the past, Maya. I can't change what I did. All I can do is show up now. And I will. I'll be there for her. Maya was quiet for a long moment before she spoke again. "I'm doing this for her, Cole. Not for you. Not for me. But for Lila. She deserves to know the truth. And so do you." The next few days felt like an eternity. I spent every waking moment trying to prepare myself for what I was about to face. How do you explain 7 years of absence to How do you explain to your daughter that you failed her, that you didn't show up when she needed you most? I knew I couldn't sugarcoat it. I couldn't tell her things that weren't true. And I certainly couldn't make excuses. The only thing I could do was own up to my mistakes and hope that Lila could understand, that she could forgive me. When the day finally came, I showed up early. Maya and I had agreed that I would speak with Lila alone, that she would be there if Lila needed her, but that this conversation had to come from me. I was the one who had been absent. I was the one who had left. It was my responsibility to explain it to her. Lila was sitting on the couch when I walked in, her legs curled up under her, a blanket draped over her lap. She looked up when I entered, her big brown eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and uncertainty. "Hi, Lila," I said softly, sitting down next to her. "Hi, Daddy," she said quietly. The words sounded strange coming from her, like she wasn't sure if it was something she could say, but it was a start. It was progress. I took a deep breath. "Lila, there's something we need to talk about," I began, my voice steady but heavy. I've been thinking a lot about what you've been asking, about why I wasn't there when you were born. And I want to tell you the truth, okay? Lila nodded, her eyes wide, waiting for me to explain. I wasn't there because I made a choice, I said, my throat tight. A bad choice. I was focused on work. I thought that if I worked hard enough, everything else would fall into place. But I was wrong. I should have been there for you. I should have been there for your mum. I should have been there for both of you. And I'm sorry. Lila stared at me for a moment, her little brow furrowed. Then, softly, she asked, "Why didn't you come back? Why didn't you come see me?" I felt my heart break. This was the hardest part, the part I wasn't sure I could fix. Because I thought you were gone. I thought I lost you, and I couldn't face that. I couldn't face being the kind of father who didn't show up. And so, I stayed away. But I was wrong, Lila. I was so wrong. And I am so sorry. She sat there, her small hands clutching the blanket, trying to process what I was saying. I could see the hurt in her eyes, the confusion. But there was something else. Something that told me she understood. Or at least, that she was willing to try. "You're here now," she said softly. "Does that mean you're not going to leave again?" I felt the lump in my throat swell. "No, Lila," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm not going to leave again. I'm here now, and I'm going to keep showing up. I'm going to be the dad you deserve, the dad I should have been all along." Lila didn't say anything for a moment. She just looked at me with those big eyes, as if weighing my words. Then, slowly, she reached out and took my hand. "I believe you, Daddy," she said, her voice small but steady. "I believe you." And in that moment, I knew something had shifted. I wasn't sure what the future held, or whether Maya and I would ever rebuild the relationship we had once had. But for the first time, I felt like I was where I was supposed to be with Lila, finally, and for her sake, I would do whatever it took to make sure I didn't screw it up again.